Last week I made 6 DIY Disney Princess Easter eggs, so this week I'm going to round it out to an even dozen. I'm having a lot of fun making these princess Easter eggs, but I have a really great idea for what to do with them next. So be sure to subscribe down below and ring the bell for a notification when I upload videos every Monday and Thursday. Just like last week, I'm using some brown paper mache eggs from the craft store, covered in acrylic paint, and then with various trims and notions scavenged from my really extensive craft and art supplies. This is a great project to use up the little odds and ends of supplies that you have sitting around from previous projects. So for today's first egg, I'm starting with Snow White, so I'm going to paint about the bottom third of this egg yellow. Then I move on and paint the rest of the egg a nice royal blue. It's always a good idea to start with lighter colors and work your way to the darker ones so you can cover up any mistakes and clean up your edges easier. In this particular case, I plan on covering up the seam between the yellow and the blue, but you never know, sometimes you change your idea, sometimes you get a better one partway through. It's always better to have a somewhat presentable seam and the edges between paint colors whenever possible. Next, I'm going to use some red bling ribbon to make the headband and waistband of Snow White. So I go across the top section first and then around the center area with the same ribbon. For Snow White's signature red bow, I cut the center section down to be narrower and then just folded each of the wider sections in and glued them down near the center for the bow. This way, the knot section of the bow is about a 2x2 square, and it's not the most perfect bow, but it definitely gets across the right feeling. For Ariel, I started with a nice bright turquoise over the entire egg. Then, when that was dry, I wrapped it up nice and tight in a little piece of a scrap fishnet material. The tighter you pull the fishnet, the cleaner edges you will get, but also the larger spaces you're going to get, so you can sort of fudge that around a little bit until you're happy with it for the look that you're going for. Once I had it where I wanted it, I went ahead and tied it off in place to keep it from moving around. Then I just sort of dabbed over various random sections of the egg with a gold metallic paint. Ariel doesn't necessarily have a gold feel to her character in any way, but this was a good way to get across that magic and tie it into some of the other eggs in the series. Then to make it feel more Eastery, I bisected it vertically with some more of the same red ribbon bling. Then I cut each of those sections into with some more of the same ribbon. In the remaining sections, I applied some random dots of glue and put down some tiny little pearls. Because if anything screams mermaid, it's definitely pearls. Next, moving on to Aurora, I painted one half of the egg a nice pastel pink and the other half a nice light blue. I wasn't worried about keeping my edge between the two colors too terribly neat on this one because I know for sure that I'm going to be covering that up. Then I went over the entire egg with a little bit of the same silver glitter paint that I've been using because it is a magical dress, so why not? Then to tie into the neckline of Aurora's dress, I used the same white satin ribbon that I've used on previous eggs. Then, since the ribbon doesn't sit nice and flat across the curved edges of the egg, I outlined the ribbon on either side with some silver bling. Then I took a sheer ribbon that is a pink to blue ombre. To tie into the half and half feel of the rest of the egg, I want the bow to be pink on the top on one side and blue on top on the other. So I take my ribbon and twist it in the center until I have blue on top on one side and pink on top on the other, and then I just make a tiny little bow out of that. Then I just glued the bow to the top of the egg and covered the center of the bow with a little bit more of the silver bling. For Tinkerbell, I covered the entire egg in a nice bright green, and then used a silver glitter, but I made the glitter more pronounced on the top of the egg and then fading out slightly as I got to the bottom of the egg to give that sort of sprinkling pixie dust feel. Then I took an iridescent plastic and cut out a tiny, tiny pair of wings. I scrunched down in the center of the wings and tied it off tightly with a piece of string. Then I glued the wings to the back of the egg and covered my knot with a tiny sparkly foam star. Then I took more of the same star and scattered them across the front of the egg. It still wasn't quite magical enough for me, so I took a few bright green crystals and scattered those randomly across the surface of the egg. I figured you can't have enough sparkle for a fairy, so I was pretty happy with this one. Moving on to Anna, I decided to go with one of her original costumes, so I started with the fuchsia of her cape. Then I worked in some black to represent the bodice of her dress. I didn't want to use too much black because we are talking Easter eggs here, but it just seemed like the right thing to do, and I am going to be decorating that section later on. Then I moved on and did the entire bottom portion of the egg in a bright royal blue for her skirt. Then I trimmed out the entire cape and skirt sections in a gold metallic paint. I just freehanded this, so it's not absolutely perfect, but I think it's a lot of fun and it added that nice little bit of sparkle. Then I put a little gold design down the front to represent the one on her bodice. Again, not an exact replica, more like inspired by the feel of her motif. And you can't have Anna without Elsa. So I started with a white base coat over the entire egg because at this point I know that the light blue that I'm using is not terribly opaque. So since that is a little bit transparent, I wanted to have a nice base coat of white underneath. But for this project, the transparency has sort of worked to my favor. For Elsa, it has that sort of frosted effect. Once the blue was done, I added a coat of silver glitter. Then I took 3 long pieces of white thread and tied them together in the center. Then I divided that into 3 sections of 2 and braided the white yarn. Then I wrapped some white ribbon vertically around the entire egg. I played around with placement a little bit and then decided how long I wanted the braid, tied it off at the bottom, and then cut it to length. Then I glued the braid down to the side of the egg. Then I took some tiny sparkly foam snowflakes and I used a big one to cover the top of the egg where the ribbon and the braid all come together on the egg, and a smaller one at the bottom of the braid. Then I put a tiny rhinestone on the center of each snowflake. And that finishes up my Elsa egg.
And that finishes
finishes up my nice round dozen of princess Easter eggs. Did I get to your favorite character? If not, please let me know in the comments down below what other really awesome Disney characters this would be fun for. I hope you found this helpful and inspiring. If you did, please like the video. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.